We've all seen the pictures, the stooped shoulders can across the heavy brow, the club, the brutish caveman, but what if that's wrong? What if the truth is darker, more complex? We think of them as simple hunters, surviving ice and mammoths. Almost nobody talks about the uncomfortable parts. The skulls smashed open, the small bones with cut marks that match the butchered deer, the children's graves that don't look like graves at all. We find their tools, we find their fires, but in the cold earth of Europe and Asia, we also find evidence of something else, a practice so disturbing it changes how we see them, how we see ourselves. Was it just hunger, or was it a belief, a ritual, a sacrifice? We are going to look at the cold, hard receipts buried for 50,000 years. If you value documented ancient history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology and the peer-reviewed Journal of Human Evolution. Now back to the story. The story begins in a rock shelter in what we now call Croatia. The site is Krapina. The year is 1905. A scientist named Dragutin Gorjanovic Kramberger is digging through layers of earth, pulling out stone tools and ancient animal bones. Then he finds something else. Human bones. Not one skeleton, but pieces of dozens of individuals. The layers of earth they're in are old. Very old. 130,000 years old. These aren't modern humans. They are Neanderthals, and their bones tell a violent story. Almost 900 fragments. Many are smashed. Many have strange scratches on them. At first, people think it's just the damage of time, of rocks falling, of sediment pressing down for 100,000 years. But then they look closer. They look at the bone of a young Neanderthal, an adolescent known as Krapina 120.7. It's a piece of the forehead, and on it there are lines, 35 of them, short, parallel cuts. These aren't random scratches. They look deliberate. They look like marks made by a stone tool, slicing away the flesh and muscle from the skull. Then they look at the other bones, finger bones with cut marks where tendons would be, a kneecap carefully sliced, long bones, like the femur and tibia, are shattered. Not a clean break, but smashed open, the way you would crack a bone to get the rich marrow inside. The conclusion is inescapable. These Neanderthals were butchered. They were eaten. For a long time, this was the evidence for Neanderthal cannibalism, a brutal act born of starvation. The Ice Age was a hard time. Maybe they were just desperate, but the cuts on the skull of that one child didn't quite fit. It looked too careful, too methodical for a frenzy of hunger. It looked like a procedure. Fast forward to France, the Ardèche River Gorge, a cave called Moula Guerci. It is 9099. Archaeologists are excavating a layer dated to 100,000 years ago. They find a Neanderthal hearth, animal bones, and tools, standard stuff. Then they find more bones, 120 Neanderthal fragments. They belong to 6 individuals, 2 adults, 2 teenagers, 2 children. One child was around 6 or 7 years old. The other was a teenager. And just like at Krapina, their bones are a mess. Skulls are broken open, jaw bones are smashed. Every single long bone is cracked for marrow. The truly chilling part is how these human bones are mixed in with the animal bones. The team finds the remains of red deer and other animals. They analyze the cut marks on the deer bones, where the stone tools sliced through muscle, where they scraped flesh from the bone. They map the entire butchering process. Then they turn to the Neanderthal bones. The marks are identical. The child's femur is processed in exactly the same way as a deer's femur. The skull of an adult is broken open just like an animal skull to get to the brain. There is no special treatment here, no respect for the dead. They were meat. For the team at Moula Guerci, this was proof of dietary cannibalism. It wasn't ritual, it was lunch. You are in a cave 100,000 years ago. Winter is closing in. The hunt has failed. There is no food. You look at the members of your group. What do? It's a simple, brutal equation of survival. Case closed, except for one detail. The bones weren't tossed out with the rest of the garbage. They were found inside the living space, right near the fire. You don't usually process your food and leave the bones where you sleep. It's a small thing, but it's strange. The story was supposed to be simple, but it wasn't. Now we go to Spain, the mountains of Asturias, a cave system called El Sidron. In 1994, cavers exploring a remote passage find human bones. They think it's from the Spanish Civil War, but the bones are old, very old. The site is excavated. What they find is a sealed chamber, a side passage that collapsed 49,000 years ago. Inside is a single catastrophic event frozen in time. A family, 13, Neanderthals. They call this place the Tunnel of Bones. There are 3 adult males. They are related. Brothers, or a father and his sons. There are 3 adult females. They are not related to the males. They came from other groups. It's a classic hunter-gatherer family structure. Then there are the children. 3 adolescents, 2 younger children, between 5 and 9 years old, and 1 infant, maybe 2 or 3. All 13 of them died together, and all 13 of them were eaten. Their bones carry more than 1,700 cut marks. Their skeletons were systematically dismembered. Skulls were removed, limbs were separated, then the flesh was stripped off. The long bones were smashed for marrow. The skulls were broken at the base to get to the brain. Even the small bones of the hands and feet were cracked open. It is the most complete and brutal case of Neanderthal cannibalism ever found. It looks like an open and shut case. Another group attacked them, killed them, and ate them. A territorial dispute, maybe. A raid, but the science got better. Genetic analysis of the skeletons revealed their relationships. This was a family. The cut marks were studied under microscopes. They could tell which marks were for skinning, which for dismembering, which for scraping off the last bits of meat. The pattern was efficient, practiced, but there was something else. After they were butchered, their bones were not just thrown away. They were carefully separated. The long bones were in one pile, the skulls in another. It was almost organized. And among the remains of the 5-year-old child in the femurs, they found something else. The child's jaw had been hit so hard it broke, but it was a perimortem injury, meaning it happened at or near the time of death. It wasn't an old wound. And the hyoid bone, a small bone in the throat, was intact. This means the child likely wasn't strangled. The jaw was broken, the skull was opened, the brain removed, the bones show signs of malnutrition, the teeth have enamel hypoplasia, lines that show where growth stopped because of hunger or sickness. This family was struggling. So, was this an attack from outsiders? Or did something happen within the group? Did they sacrifice one of their own to survive? Or to appease whatever forces they believed ruled their world? The evidence in the tunnel of bones is clean, but the motive is a complete mystery. The careful arrangement of the bones whispers ritual. The signs of starvation scream survival. The truth is locked in that Spanish cave 49,000 years ago. If you value documented ancient history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources like the archaeological reports from the El Sidron site and studies published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Now back to the story. Not all Neanderthal children ended this way. To understand the darkness, you have to see the light. We travel east to Dadaria Cave in Syria. Here, in 1993, a team uncovered something that changed everything we thought we knew about Neanderthals. A burial, dated to about 70,000 years ago. It was a child, a toddler, about 2 years old. It was lying on its back, in a small pit that had been dug for it. Its arms were outstretched, and its legs were bent. This wasn't a body that had just been left behind. This was a deliberate act, an interment. At the child's head, there was a rectangular limestone slab. It had been placed there. On the child's chest, where its heart would have been, lay a piece of flint. It was a beautiful, triangular tool, an almost perfect point. It wasn't just a rock. It was an object with meaning. This was Dadaria 1, the first nearly complete Neanderthal child skeleton ever found. This small body tells a story of grief, of care. This group took the time to dig a grave, to place the body in a specific position, and to leave an offering. This is not the act of a mindless brute. This is the act of a human being mourning a loss. It proves that Neanderthals had complex social bonds and a concept of death that went beyond just biology. They cared for their children in life, and they cared for them in death. So how do we reconcile this tender burial with the butchered remains at Krapina, Muligersi, and El Sidron? It's a paradox. It shows that Neanderthal society wasn't monolithic. Different groups, in different places, at different times, had different practices. Some buried their dead with reverence. Others ate them. The existence of careful burials makes the evidence for cannibalism even more shocking. It wasn't that they didn't know any better. They knew what it meant to respect the dead, so when they chose not to, it was a deliberate choice. The question is why? Let's go back to France. The famous site of La Forêt. For a long time, this was called the Neanderthal Cemetery. Excavated in the early 20th century, it held the remains of at least 7 individuals, an adult male, a female, and 5 children. All seemed to be intentionally buried. Dating back around 70,000 years, it was the textbook example of Neanderthal burials. One of the children was an infant, buried in a pit with 3 beautiful flint tools. Another was a child of about 3, its body covered by a large stone slab with cut marks carved into it. Possibly the oldest art in the world, this was a place of family, of community, of memory. But then there's the skeleton known as La Pharisee 8. It was a child. When it was found, its body was there, but its skull was missing. Years later, archaeologists digging a few meters away found a child's skull. It was buried by itself. Analysis showed it belonged to the body of La Pharisee 8. The head had been deliberately removed and buried separately from the body. Why? This is called a two-stage burial process. Maybe the body was left to decompose, and then the skull, the most important part, was retrieved and given its own special burial. This is a practice seen in some modern human cultures. It's a complex ritual act, but there's another possibility. Maybe the head was taken as a trophy, or used in a ritual. Maybe it was consumed. The line between a complex burial and a ritual sacrifice starts to get very blurry at La Pharisee. The careful burial of the other children at the same site makes the strange case of La Pharisee 8 even more profound. Something different happened to this child, something special, or something terrible. We journey now to the edge of the Neanderthal world, to Uzbekistan in Central Asia, a cave called Teshik Tash. In 1938, a Soviet archaeologist named Alexei Okladnikov made a spectacular find. The skeleton of a Neanderthal child, a boy, about 9 years old. He was buried in a shallow pit, but it was what was around him that made the world take notice. 5, possibly 6, pairs of Siberian ibex horns. They had been driven into the ground in a circle, surrounding the boy's head. It was a stunning image, a shrine, a clear, unambiguous ritual burial. For decades, the boy of Teshik Tash was the ultimate proof of Neanderthal spirituality. He wasn't just buried, he was sanctified. The horns, from powerful male animals, were a symbol of strength, of protection in the afterlife. It was a story everyone wanted to believe, but science is a relentless detective. In the 2000s, researchers went back to Teshik Tash. They re-examined the site, the bones, the horns, and they found problems. The original excavation was not well documented. The bones of the boy were mixed with animal bones, and a new culprit emerged: cave hyenas. Hyenas are known to collect bones and horns and bring them back to their dens. The new theory was that the boy's body might have just been lying in the cave, and the horns were brought there by animals over time. The circle might have been an illusion, a misinterpretation by an archaeologist who was looking for ritual. The debate still rages. Was it a sacred burial? Or just a pile of bones in a hyena's den? The boy of Teshik Tash sits right on the edge of our understanding. He represents the problem of seeing ritual in the deep past. One person sees a shrine, another sees a coincidence, but the image of that small boy, surrounded by horns, is hard to shake. Even if it was an accident, it forces you to wonder what Neanderthals thought when they saw it. Did they see meaning there? So, what is the answer? Why would a people who carefully buried their toddlers also butcher and eat their own children? There is no single, easy explanation. The truth is likely a mosaic of different reasons, changing with time, place, and circumstance. First, there is survival. The world of the Neanderthals was brutal. Glaciers advanced and retreated. Game animals disappeared. There were long lean periods where starvation was a constant threat. In those times, the cold logic of survival may have overridden everything else. The remains at Muligersi, treated exactly like deer, point strongly to this. It's ugly, but it's practical. Then there's warfare, or at least intergroup violence. The family at El Sidron may have been the victims of an attack by a rival group. In this scenario, cannibalism is the ultimate act of domination. You don't just defeat your enemies, you consume them, you erase them. It's a message. This is our territory. This is what happens to trespassers. The fact that the victims at El Sidron were a whole family, children and all, makes this possibility even more terrifying. But then we come to the most difficult idea: ritual. What if it wasn't about hunger or war? What if it was about belief? In some human cultures, consuming a part of a deceased relative is an act of reverence, a way to keep their spirit or strength within the family. This is called endocannibalism. Could the strange, organized butchery at El Sidron be a form of this? A funeral rite that is completely alien to us? Or what about sacrifice? The act of killing something to appease a god, a spirit, or the forces of nature. We have no direct evidence for Neanderthal gods, no temples, no idols, but they lived in a world of powerful, unpredictable forces. The coming of the ice, the failing of the hunt, sickness. To a pre-scientific mind, these are not random events. They are caused by something: angry spirits, an unbalanced world, In such a world, Malaios, you might do anything to restore balance. You might make an offering. The greatest offering you could make, a child from your own family. It is the most terrible thought, but it's not illogical. It follows a kind of spiritual calculus. To save the many, you give up the one. The cuts on the child's skull at Krapina, the broken jaw of the child at El Sidron, were these just part of the butchering process? Or were they part of a killing ritual? We will never know for sure. Their beliefs died with them. All that is left are the bones and the marks on them. The final piece of this puzzle isn't a bone. It's a feather. At a site called Grotta di Fumane in Italy, archaeologists found something amazing in layers dated to 44,000 years ago. They found bird bones, specifically the wing bones of large birds of prey, lammergeiers, eagles, vultures, and these bones had tiny, precise cut marks on them. The marks show that the Neanderthals were not eating these birds. They were carefully cutting off the large flight feathers. These feathers are not good for fletching arrows. They are big, showy, and often have striking colors. They are, for one thing, decoration, adornment, symbolism. This is the smoking gun. It proves, without a doubt, that Neanderthals had symbolic thought. They understood that an object could mean more than what it was. A feather wasn't just a feather. It could represent the power of an eagle, the spirit of the sky. They decorated their bodies. They had an aesthetic sense. They had culture. And if you have symbols, you have stories. You have myths. You have a way of explaining the world. You have beliefs. The people who carefully collected eagle feathers are the same people who smashed the skulls of their children. They weren't mindless brutes acting on instinct. They were thinking, feeling beings, living in a symbolic world we can only guess at. Their actions, even the most violent, had meaning. We just don't have the dictionary to read it anymore. They weren't a failed experiment in evolution. They were human, in a way that is both familiar and terrifyingly strange. They are a part of our own story, their DNA still present in most people alive today. We carry their ghosts inside us. Their world is gone. Their voices are silent. Only the bones remain waiting in the cold dark, whispering stories we are still learning how to hear.